the reverse of multiplication. So if we had something like 2 times 3 equals 6, we know that the reverse of that would be 6 divided by 3 equals 2. And so when we're doing long division, we actually have to think multiplication. So what we're looking for is, to start off with, is we want to determine if this, how many times this number goes into 344. So what we do is we start off by looking at the first number in this series, which is a 3. And we say to ourselves, is there a number that we can multiply 8 by that will get us close to 3? And the actual answer is no, because 8 is larger than 3. So we don't normally put anything in here, but as you're starting out, sometimes it's helpful just to put in a little fake 0 there to remind us that, in fact, there is no number that goes in here. So what we do is, rather than say, does 8 go into 3 and does 8 go into 4, what we say to ourselves is, is there a number that 8 can multiply by that gets us close to 34? And the answer in this case is 4. Now, what we do is we simply take 8 and we multiply it by 4, and we get our answer, and we put it down here like this, which is 32. Now what we do is we subtract. 4 minus 2 is 2, and this cancels out, so our answer is 2. Well, now what we have is we have a number that's left over here, this 4. And what we need to do is we need to reach up there with both hands and grab this sucker and bring it on down, and now we have 24. We start the process again. We say, is there a number that we can multiply by 8 that gets us close to 24? Well, we can know from our simple multiplication that that number is 3, and now we say 3 times 8 is 24. We subtract it out, and we're left with no remainder. And as we can see, there are no more numbers to drag down, and because there's no more numbers to drag down, we know that we're in fact finished. Alright, well, sometimes numbers will not divide evenly by other numbers, and we're left with what is called a remainder. So if we take a look at this example, 6 into 439, we go through the exact same process. We start off by saying, hey, will 6 go into 4? Or is there a number that will multiply by 6 that gets us close to 4? The answer is no. So now we look at it as 43. Is there a number that gets us close to 43? The answer is yes. We know that 7 times 6 equals 42. And when we subtract that, we're left with 1. Now we reach up, we grab our 9, and we drag it back down. And we attach it to that 1 to give us a number of 19. Now, we sit here and say, okay, well, 6, is there a number that gets us close to 19 by multiplying it by 6? And the answer is 3. 3 times 6 equals 18. Well, when we subtract, we realize that there's one number that is left over. And when we see that one number is left over, and there is no more numbers to drag down, we say that this number is in fact the remainder. So when we write it out, we write it as 73 remainder 1. Alright, what we're going to do is now we're going to divide into a 4-digit number to show exactly a couple of mistakes that students make. Okay. First one is we're going to start off by doing the exact same process. This number is very similar in a lot of ways to the previous one. So we know 6 cannot divide into 4. We know that it will go into 43 7 times. 7 times 6 is 42. Subtract, we're left with 1. Now here's the dilemma that we run into. Students take a look and they see, hey, there's a 9 left over and a 6 left over, and I want to drag both of them down, obviously. And that is incorrect. We can only grab one number at a time and drag it down. Okay, so now this number becomes 19. 6 into 19, well, we know that 3 times 6 equals 18. And when we subtract, we're left with 1. Now we can go back for our other number, which is a 6, and we can drag that number down here. So remember, we only drag one number at a time. And is there a number times 6 that gets us close to 16? Well, the closest we can get is 2, because 2 times 6 is 12, and when we subtract, we're left with 4. And as we can see, there are no more numbers for us to drag down, and we see that this number here is smaller than 6, so therefore this becomes our remainder. So our answer is 732, remainder 4. Okay, I selected this equation because it shows one more key point that students make common mistakes with. So let's go through what we've already done so far, and when we get to that part, I'll slow down and explain it. All right, so what we've got here is we started off by saying, well, it won't go into 1, but it will go into 16, and the number that will multiply by 4 to get us close to 16 would be 4. In fact, it gets us right to 16. Okay, now what happens is that we're left with 0 here. And knowing what we know, we can only drag down one number at a time. And in this case, it's a 2. So we drag it down and we are at 2. Well, based on what we've already done is we say, well, hang on a sec. This number here is smaller than 4. So are we done? Well, remember back before, we always ask ourselves, are there more numbers to drag down? And in this case, there is another number to drag down. It's a 4. But before we actually drag that number down, we actually have to take up this place value that is right above the 2. So what we can say is that 4 does not go in, or it goes in 0 times. 0 times 4 is 0, and when we subtract that, we end up with 2. So we're right back where we started from, but now that we've filled this place value spot, now what we can do is we can go up and grab that 4 and drag it down, and we say, well, now we've got 24. And what number times 4 will get us close to 24? Well, that would be 6. 6 times 4 is 24. And when we finish it off, we are now done, and we are left with no remainder. And our answer is 406. So what we're really saying is that 624 will divide by 4 406 times. Now the counter of that to check and see if we're right would be, well, if we took 406 and multiplied it by 4, we can see that 4 times 6 is 24. We can see that it in fact equals 1624.